All right, let's get started. My name is Muffi, Ghadiali. I've been in product management for close to 25 years. Been in small companies, in startups, big companies like HP, Amazon, which was not that big, now it's huge. I've lived in India, in Hong Kong, in Singapore. And through the years, I've gone through many different product management positions, starting off with market research and eventually going into product management. I also teach at Stanford as part of Stanford Continuing Studies, where I teach, along with a co-instructor, I teach product management and agile development. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today is based on my personal experiences in terms of how I got those jobs, how I got into product management, how all the mistakes that I made, and this is sort of a compilation of all of that. This presentation started out about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was after one of my classes that a student approached me, and I started giving him advice in terms of how to interview at jobs, how to apply for jobs, and things like that. And then he talked to a few people and talked to a bunch of folks that really liked the advice I gave him, and they said, can you compile it into one single set? And so this kind of evolved. This has now become a part of my one of my sessions at Stanford, which I teach in about an hour. And so I'll jump right in. I'm going to pause in between these sections so I can take questions in between. So if you have questions, hold them, and I'll try to address everything by the time we are done. So before I start into the presentation, there's one nuance that I couldn't figure out in terms of why certain people were successful and why they were not. And a good analogy is managing your career is really a game, if you think about it. A lot of us get into managing our careers without actually knowing the rules of the game. So if you think about, we all know how soccer is played, right? But imagine yourself being put on the soccer field and asked to play the game, right? And so you're standing in the middle of the field and going, okay, everybody's kicking the ball in this direction, so I guess I've got to kick the ball in that direction. And then you figure out, oh, people are going to, your objective is to put the ball into this square box called the goal. And it's a lot like that, if you think about it. Managing your career first is understanding the rules, then you start playing by the rules, and you start bending the rules slightly, and sometimes you can break them. I'll show you some ways of how you do that. So this is what this whole presentation is about, is first understanding what these rules are, and then how do you get around those rules, how do you break them, how do you sometimes actually bring them to work to your advantage. So the formatting is a little messed up, but okay. Before we get into product management and careers, there's a fundamental difference between startups and mature companies, and your approach to these two job markets is very different. So in a startup, the fundamental difference is that a lot is unknown. In a mature company, they have a lot of stuff that's known. So what's unknown? So in a startup, you don't know who your customers are. You don't exactly know what need you're servicing. You're kind of evolving your business model as you go. You don't know who your competitors are. Sometimes the competitors are direct, sometimes they're indirect, and eventually how will you make money? Very few things are known. In the beginning, it's like, okay, we have this product, and pretty much that's known. And the reason why this is important is as the startup goes from the known and expands the knowledge base of known, roles evolve within the company. So product managers' roles evolve within the company, and that's where you have the opportunity to take advantage and grow the company. So let's look at startups. So typically, when you start off early stages, so the smallest startup that I was in was a company called Ouya, and we built a game console based on Android. And when we started, there were 2 people in the company, the CEO and myself. She was the marketing side of the company, the vision of the company, and I was the product side of the company, just 2 of us. And it started off as just 2 of us, and then every product question, so be it hardware, be it software, services, anything, supply chain, operations, warranty was on. And the product was basically a game console that was built on Android. It was an NVIDIA-based platform. It had its own app store, its own developer content, and you could plug it into a TV, you get 2 game controllers, you start playing games. we launched that company on Kickstarter, and our intent at that time was to raise $1 million. And more than anything else, the idea here was we want to build it, but do we know if they will come or not? And so at that time, the ask was $1 million, which was the biggest ask ever on Kickstarter. Nobody had asked for $1 million at that time. Actually, $995,000, just under $1 million. And when we launched, we actually got to $1 million in the first 8 hours. By the end of 24 hours, we were at about $2.5 million. We finished the Kickstarter at about $8 million. So within the first 12 hours, it was, okay, they're here, now you got to build this. And so within day one, we were basically building a product. And that's where all these rules started to evolve. So especially when you have these small companies with 2, 3, 4, 5 people, you have a lot of human dynamics. You have to get along very quickly. You have to make really quick decisions. There's not much time to argue because, especially in our case, we were, okay, we know what the product is, now we have to build it, and we have to service all these customers. In a mature business, all of that goes away because you have these focus roles. So you have marketing, you have product management, you have supply chain, product development, engineering, QA, customer support. All of these roles are pretty well defined. And then you have these hierarchies. You have directors, senior directors, VPs, C-level, etc. And over time, doing a good job is just not sufficient. So when I was at HP, I spent 10 years at HP, actually more than 10 years at HP. I hoped that I'm doing a good job, and then one day my manager is going to come and tell me, great job, you're getting promoted. It's not going to happen. Never happens that way. So you got to do a good job, but you got to market yourself within a company as well. Get that visibility in the company. How many of you work in big companies like Cisco's and that level of companies? Okay. Do you guys have an intranet where jobs are posted? Typically, right? So if you look at jobs that are senior level, so director level, manager level, typically what happens is when the job is posted, that means somebody's name is already on it. So there is this concept of the list. The list is basically a list of people who will get promoted in all these companies. And it's just good business and people management practice is, as you get to management levels, you're required to create a succession plan. The succession plan is who's going to take over when you promote up. And all good managers want to move up the chain. So they want the second in command to take over. And I didn't realize that there was this list, and you need to be on that list to even be considered. So once I figured this out, and one of my managers told me, like, you got to be on this list. I said, what list? There's this virtual list, succession plan, or whatever you call it. But you got to be on that list. And then you're in the running with the other people on the list. So what happened with me at HP was I had the discussion with my VP of product management at that time, and I said, I want to manage a team. I want to be a director level. And he said, yep, okay, you got these 6 months to prove yourself. These are your specific objectives. I hit those objectives, and after 6 months, we had the conversation. And he said, awesome, everything's done. I've talked to HR. Now, can you write me a job description because I need to post it on the intranet? When the job is posted, especially director level and higher, it's pretty much gone. You got to be in the game before that. Going back to startups and what's the difference between startups. So my favorite quote is what Steve Blank, who's a legend in the Valley, what he answered was, why can't companies be as innovative as startups? And companies can only do what's legal. Startups can do anything. And this is a very fundamental change that most people don't get over. So when I went from HP to a startup, like, what the hell is going on here? We can't do these things. And my CEO kept asking me, why not? Why not? So for instance, when we finished the Kickstarter campaign, we were going to be shipping it to 170 countries across the globe. It was like 117 countries, like 117 countries across the globe. And I was like, that's impossible. We can't do that. And we need to get certification for all these countries, and we need to have regulatory and stuff like that. And he said, just ship it. Who cares? Because at that time, he wanted to raise the money, right? And from that standpoint, yeah, I mean, we had 2 game consoles shipping into Burkina Faso, small country in Africa, and we're like, okay, just ship it. So it's that thing that startups can do, which most big companies cannot. And there are good reasons why big companies cannot. So when I was at Amazon, I absolutely could not do that. You can't ship a Kindle across the world without having all the legal and regulatory stuff in place. But a startup, you can get away with a lot of things that a big company cannot. Okay, I'm going to pause quickly. Any questions so far? Okay. So before you start with your product management search or your career thinking, start with why. This is incredibly important because that's something that will always come back and help you when you're in the job interview or when you're in that conversation with the hiring manager or with the recruiter. And ask yourself the 5 whys. This is incredibly important. Why do you want to be a product manager? If you're already a product manager, why do you want to switch into a different career? Why do you want to be a product manager for that product, for that company, for that team? And why do you want that job? And there are no wrong or right answers. These are basically, everybody has reasons why they want to do things. Like I had a really good reason for why I wanted to join Amazon at that time, and a really good reason why I left and joined a startup. But these 5 questions drive a tremendous amount of clarity internally. You really get to understand why you're there in the first place. And I interviewed for a lot of jobs where I wasn't convinced myself. So for instance, I interviewed at a company, and this was at the time when Zynga and Playdom and these, all these social gaming companies were the rage. Right? It was a rage for 2 or 3 years where everybody was throwing money into social gaming. And I thought, well, I need to get into social gaming as well. And so somehow I got myself into the interview. I'm sitting in the interview going, I don't know why the hell I'm here. Other than the fact that it's a hot market to be in. And it was very clear to the guys who were interviewing was, okay, you're not here. I mean, you're here, but we don't see you being part of the company for a variety of reasons, right? So it's incredibly important to get these whys. And at the end of these questions, you might, and the answer might be, there's nothing for me. Before the interview, learn everything you can about the company, the team, and the products. And the #1 resource here is LinkedIn. It's an awesome resource where you can find out who's part of the hiring team, who's the management team. Amazon is an awesome resource for products. So if you ever want to find out what's wrong with any product, go and read the 1-star reviews on Amazon. It'll tell you a ton of things. Most customers put a 1-star review and they tell you why. And it could be the product itself sucks, or it's been oversold in terms of what it can do, or the support sucks, or things like that. But it's an awesome piece of knowledge that you can go into the company during the interview and say, here's what's wrong with the product and here's how you fix it. Okay, now the interview. So this is, I'll walk you through the interview process, typically how it works in most companies today. And it's a 3-step process, and if anybody gets the analogy, this is an interview for IKEA. So it's a 3-step process where there's a phone screen first. And the phone screen is really somebody from the hiring team that does a first level sanity check, about 30 minutes to really understand if this candidate is worth bringing in for the 4 or 5 hours and giving this time. And so when I used to do phone screens, and I interviewed hundreds of product managers at Amazon, just at Amazon itself. And my first question would always be, do you know what this job is about? And they'll say, yes, I know, I don't. And I would explain what the job is about. And then they say, okay, now that you know what this job is about, tell me why you're the best candidate. And I would just stop at that. And then I would have a whole range of answers. So the best answer was basically 3 or 4 sentences where the guy nailed every single thing that I asked for. And the worst answer was the guy went on for 30 minutes. I kid you not, 30 minutes before I said, I'm done, thank you. So one of the things that I did was I would never stop them. I would say, go on as long as you want and explain to me why you're the best candidate for the job. So that's the phone screen. The next is the on-site. So if you pass the phone screen, then you're on the on-site, and then typically it'll be a mix of the team that's going to be working with the product manager. Some companies do it differently. Google has a very generic hiring process, or used to have a generic hiring process that's kind of changing now. So Google does this sort of pool of hiring where they hire people for generic skill sets, which kind of works for software, doesn't work very well for product management. And then basically you pass that interview process and you're in this pool where any hiring manager can pick you. That's changing as well. And then once that's done, and if you pass the debrief, then there's an offer, and then you get the job. So every interview question rather comes down to this 3 things. Can you do the job? Tell us why, what you have done in the past, what you can do to do the job. Do you really want to be here? And this is like my previous example, that's where I failed here, where it's like, yeah, I could do the job, but I don't know if I really want to be here. And then do we want you to be here? Which is also really important. Is there a culture fit? Is there a synergy between what you bring to the table and what the company values are? And I'll talk a little bit about each of these things and how you can understand what the culture is and present yourself accordingly. So interview questions. So typically, I would break my questions down into 4 categories. The first one is just know-how. Just tell me how much you understand about the product. So I worked on the Amazon Fire TV, which is the last product that I worked on before I left Amazon. And my question would be, Amazon has this feature called Say and Play It, which is basically you pick up the remote control, you press the microphone button, you say whatever you want. For instance, I can say, play House of Cards. And then within a second or so, House of Cards shows up and starts playing. What happens in the background? So it's something that happens within a second, but if you really step back and think about it, it touches every single aspect of Amazon. It touches hardware, it touches wireless connectivity, it touches cloud services, it touches content. All of that is packaged and delivered within a second or so. And this helped me kind of evaluate how people think through what are the different elements involved. So you can imagine how many product managers are involved in just this one feature that takes about a second to implement. So that's one. The second was really persuasion. So how do you deal with conflicts and challenges? And I apologize, the text is cut off here. This is really understanding how you've dealt with product challenges. And anybody who's delivered a product absolutely has to have challenges along the way, because things are dynamic. Requirements can always never be perfect. Things change along the way. There's people dynamics that's involved as well. And so I look for what are the challenges that you ran into, what are the conflicts, and how you work through them. So as product managers, we always go through these phases where, especially during the product development cycle, where there's this challenging period, either it's the time of definition of the product or there's this last minute request that came in and it just creates a lot of churn and a lot of conflict and a lot of angst. What I would recommend is in that moment, step back and look at it as an opportunity. Because it's an incredibly challenging situation. You've got all these different stakeholders fighting against each other, or the product's not meeting the spec or whatever. But it's an awesome opportunity and it makes for an awesome story. And all of this is about storytelling, right? So when you're in that situation, step back and go, okay, when this will be over, it's going to be a hell of a story to tell, right? And so I talk about all the failures and all the not so great things that happen, because it makes for an awesome story when you're in that product management interview the next time. Then there's smarts, and so, how curious are you about just things around you? So for instance, the question I used to ask was, tell me about a product that you love. And don't tell me it's an iPhone or an iPad or something. Tell me about a product that you use or you've seen other people use, right? And so example that I used to give was the Dyson vacuum cleaner. You think about it, the vacuum cleaning industry is probably 80 years old, probably 100 maybe. And it was pretty much the same. It was, the same old players, Hoover and a few others, and they did the same old things. And then Dyson came out of nowhere and completely reinvented the industry. Not just because of core technology, but just the way they presented the product. For instance, all vacuum cleaners were, all these dull gray, black, brown colors. Then Dyson had this bright pink and bright yellow and bright orange. And so you walk down the aisle in retail and go, what the hell is that? And then, so that's one element of how a complete outsider came in and changed the industry. So Dyson actually, in the early days, they pitched it to, I think it was Hoover. And their value proposition was, hey, you don't have to, you can basically, the Cyclone technology is so awesome that it never clogs, and you don't have to use these bags and stuff like that. And it's an awesome product. And Hoover said, we're not in the vacuum cleaner business, we're in the bags business. Anything that takes away from bags doesn't work for us. And then, the rest is history. But what we're looking for here is how curious are you about things around you? And if you think about it, everything is a product. Everything around us is a product. Not just physical products, but even what we do with ourselves, right? Our career is a product. We manage the career in the same way. So you manage your career as a product. In fact, I would argue that's the most important product we work on is our careers and our relationships. So everybody is a product manager. It's just having that level of curiosity of how the product works. And then the last is execution. So talk about a product that was the most challenging. What were the issues in delivering the product? And so sometimes you would get great answers, sometimes you get really interesting answers. One of the most interesting answers was, I've never had a challenge in delivering a product. Like, oh, that's awesome. What product have you delivered? And then as I peeled the onion, it was basically, okay, this guy actually never had delivered a product. They created products that were put in the showcase and never shipped to a customer. So, okay, if you don't ship to a customer, then you won't get any challenges. Okay. I'm going to pause. Any questions?
I have a few.
Sure.
Yeah, so for the first section of the presentation, you said you went from corporate to startup, right? How do you translate your specific, focused, somewhat well-defined role in a corporation to a startup where there's just like a much more broad skill set, or at least the attitude is required to tackle just about anything?
So the question is, how do you translate from a corporate mindset into a more startup mindset?
And how do you sell that at the interview, right?
Yes, so that's a great question. So I'll tell you exactly what happened, right? And then I'll try to answer the question. So before I joined Ouya, I was at Amazon, and so it was a big company, and you have all the resources in the world. And the way I got connected to the Ouya team, which was basically two people at that time, the core investor and the CEO, Julie, it was basically a conversation over coffee. And so they said, oh, I have this cool idea. They kind of pitched the idea to me, like, oh, we have this cool idea, and we're going to build this game console, and we're going to launch it, and this and that. And I said, that's bullshit. Here's 5 reasons why this is going to fail. And they said, oh, really? It's going to fail? Okay, if you're so smart, show us how you can fix it. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting challenge. I know what the problems are, I know how to fix them. And so I went through one by one and said, okay, this is how we build the product. And so they were talking about basically building a product through 3D printing. I'm like, there's no way to 3D print a product and ship it and manage all that stuff. You have to have manufacturing in China to get the scale and all that kind of stuff. Here's the cost of product and stuff like that. And so what eventually happened was, we had a conversation that lasted over 6 months, right? In the end, I built a prototype in my bedroom, and I sent a video to Julie saying, it works. And that was it. So there is no formula to do this. What I would do is, given the environment we are in, right? We're in Silicon Valley, where all of these conversations are happening all the time. They're happening right now, right here, right? And so start those conversations with people who are looking for your kind of skill set. Now, is there a formula to translate from corporate into startup? No, there isn't. You just jump right in and you just do the hell whatever it takes. So in the first 3 or 4 months before we actually started hiring people. So you can imagine we finished the Kickstarter, all hell just breaks loose because now we have these 60,000 people who expect a product delivered in 9 months, and we're trying to build the team. And it was, for the first 4 months, it was just do whatever it takes. So I would be on calls with our development partners in Taiwan and China in the evening, and I would be with the software guys in the morning. And when I could call time, I was at Home Depot buying paint for the office. So it's just, but the point I'm trying to make is it's not that difficult to switch that mindset. Once you're thrown in that situation, we'll just adapt. Like you're thrown in the deep end, you just swim, right? The idea, the intent there is, the biggest sort of roadblock is we used to do it that way at HP or at Amazon. You just kind of put them in the background and say, okay, it worked for that company. What's the right thing to do for the situation that I'm in? And, is it legal or not? As long as you're not doing anything criminal, you can push the bounds of everything in a startup. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. Have you ever been a product manager from the get-go, and if you actually had to transition from, let's say, an engineering function into, PM?
Okay, so I'm going to address that in a more detailed way. So hold that thought, and if I don't, then I'll answer it again. Okay, so let me move on, and I'll leave some time at the end for more questions. So mindset, and this is really a collection of things that I've kind of discovered over time in terms of what helps us as product managers be successful, and not just in interviews, but in general in our careers. So the first one is fake it till you make it, and I don't know if you have, has anybody seen this video? Amy Curry, This is one of the most awesome TED Talks ever, I think, at least in my opinion. And she talks about how our minds and body interact with each other. So we all hear about how positive thinking can affect our body, but actually the reverse is true as well. And so there's this thing called the power pose, and which is basically like this. So you just stand like this. We also call the Wonder Woman pose for the right reasons. And they actually did a study. So Amy Curry's team actually did a study where they had an A/B test where they had two groups of people interview with the same bunch of interviewees. The first group of people were told to sit in a crouch position. So basically something like this for about 5 minutes and then go into the interview. Second group of people were asked to be in this power pose. So it's like just stand like this or like this for about 5 minutes and then go into the interview. And they saw dramatic differences. So the entire pool was pretty much the same level of experience, the same sort of skill set. So they were all qualified to do the job. But the people who had the power pose came across as being incredibly more confident, incredibly more suitable for the job. And so what happens, what's interesting is from a physiological standpoint, when you're in this mood like this, it tells your mind that you're in control, that you're going to nail this, that you got this confidence. And so what I now, when I go into interviews, or even go into presentations, I go, and spend some time like this, go into the restroom and stand like this for like 5 minutes. And it looks crazy, but try it. It has an amazing effect on your mind. So that's one. The second is just visualize stuff, right? And our mind is our biggest barrier in progressing and being successful. So visualize yourself being in the interview and nailing the interview. And so what I typically do is I sit down and just meditate for about 10 minutes or so, put on some nice music, just calm myself down, think about how positive all of this is going to go, and it has a very profound effect on the other people as well. So there are athletes who use the same technique where before they start their, like, I don't know if you guys saw the Winter Olympics, right? If you notice, before they start their runs, like the snowboarding run or the ski run, they stand there and they kind of visualize. They actually visualize the entire run. So that either they're going down the half pipe or whatever, they visualize themselves going through the whole thing before they actually start. And it puts your mind into the stance of, I've done this before, I've done this successfully, I can do it again. The next is a subtle change in how you communicate. So always switch out any buts in your sentences with ands. So we had a tremendous amount of problems, but we managed to go through it, or we had a tremendous amount of problems and we nailed it, right? So all of these switches send positive signals to the guy across. They hear positive things, and people want to hear positive things when they interview. The other trick that I learned was take the break. So whenever you're in interviews, how many times has one of the interviewers asked you if you want a coffee or you want a break or something like that? Most chances are yes, right? Or you can ask, hey, can I take a break, right? What's interesting with that is, one is it gives you an opportunity to just get up, walk around, and you'll notice that when you're in the interview room, everybody's very formal because it's an interview room and you've got to be formal, and so you have this interviewer-interviewee relationship. When you step out, suddenly you're in an open space where your mindset changes and you can have a more casual conversation. We're just going to have coffee, right? Let's go and have coffee. And so walk around, go to most companies will have a small kitchen area, go and spend some time there, get a coffee, something like that. The other advantage also is that when you walk around the office, you get to see what's going on there, right? So you can get to judge the mood of the people. Like, are people happy? Are they smiling? Are they grumpy? Are there a lot of open seats there? Is it, if it's early in the day, are people in early? Do they leave early? Things like that. So it gives you a lot of insights into the company as well. And those things you can use back in the interview. You can go back in the interview room and go, I saw a lot of empty chairs, what's going on? And it could be, oh, we are hiring, and this is the new space that we or well, something's going on here, people are leaving, whatever, right? So it gives you really good insights into what's going on. So one of the interesting things that happened with me was I did this a few jobs ago where I said, yeah, I want to take the break, and so I went over to the kitchen area and grabbed a coffee. So this dude walks over, starts talking to me, and we have a good conversation, and said, great, I'm the CEO, by the way. Like, okay, that was good to know. And turns out the day after that, the hiring manager called me and said, "Oh, CEO really liked you, and so he wants you to come in for a personal interview." Okay, that's great. So there are all these sort of happy coincidences that happen when you're walking around, and it just gives you, breaks you the sort of the interview mindset. And then there's always this question, right? Okay, we're always fearful about this. Why did you do this? You have this in your resume. Either you took a break, or you switch these jobs frequently, or something that you're afraid of, right? And so the best way to address that question is ask the question yourself. So, for instance, I would, say I took a break of about a year and vacation or whatever. And when you're going through your resume, you can say, well, I took this break, and it was a great way for me to rejuvenate, come back, and do more interesting things. But the advantage of asking the question yourself is, one is you have full control of it, and you can answer it in the way you choose the best. So it's not going to be jumped on you at any point in the interview. You can just answer it as part of the rhythm, and you'll realize that even when you're going through the interview process. So say you've got 5 or 6 interviews in the day. If the question comes up in the first two, for the first 2 interviews, the third, 3, 4, 5, you can basically say, okay, this question is going to come up, and I'm going to ask and answer it on my terms. And dress like it. So this is really critical, because I've seen folks who come into interviews and dress like they don't care. And there are many reasons for just dressing well. I don't mean dress expensively, but just well dressed tells you that you really take care of yourself, and you really want to be there as well. And again, you don't have to be an expert in dressing. I'm really bad at picking clothes, so I take my wife with me whenever I go shopping. So I would take somebody who's a fashion expert with you and go shop with them. You don't have to buy expensive stuff. If you don't have somebody like that, then the best fashion cues are when you stand outside the store, you see the mannequins. Those are designed by fashion experts. So just look at the color combination of what they're wearing, the shoes, which shoes go with which denims and which jacket and stuff like that, and you quickly figure out what it takes to dress well. But this is critical, because all of these little things combine into creating a great first impression. And then, of course, after all of this stuff, there's always a rejection. So there'll be a no, and I've heard many no's, and that's how I kind of figured all this stuff out, is learning from those no's. So in all of this, there are 2 people who are actually have the same motivation as you, including yourself. So you want to get the job, and the recruiter wants to get you hired. Because their objective is to fill the job with the right candidate, move on to the next thing that's in their pipeline. So they're the most motivated to get you hired. And so ask them why, what happened? Can you tell me what was the feedback? Worst case, they might say, no, I can't share anything. Or in a lot of cases, they might say, okay, here's the things that here are the concerns. And so you can say, okay, at least you can use that information going forward. They are also a great resource at the beginning of the interviews as well. So always ask them, okay, who are the people they're going to interview me, right? And typically they'll send you a list of here are 5 people, from between 12 and 5 p.m. There are 6 or 7 people who are going to interview. Go and do all the research you can about them. Once you have their name, you know which company, their profiles on LinkedIn, and you'll always find things that are connecting you to them through either common acquaintances or common geographic areas or academic or whatever. You'll find some connections. Or you can find a product and say, hey, I saw you, last job you worked at that product and it was awesome. I'd love to learn more about it, things like that. But things that make connections. Okay. Any questions? So now I'll try and address your question about switching careers. So typically you have this catch-22 where, and I started off kind of like that as well, is, well, for this job you need experience. Well, if I'm not going to get the job, how am I going to get the experience? There's this circular argument that keeps playing on itself. So I compiled these few tips in terms of how you break that catch-22. So the first one is you talk to 5 PMs and ask them 5 questions, right? So this is an awesome forum where you have so many PMs floating around. Ask them 5 questions like, what do you do? Which company do you work for? What do you like? What do you do? What do you don't like? How did you get into this job? How did you switch your career? What are you thinking of doing next? 5 questions. You can come up with those 5 questions. This will give you 25 great responses in terms of what these PMs do. And I've had students who come back and said, I did this 5 by 5 thing and I decided this is not for me. which is great, but at least it drives clarity in terms of really what is it that you want to do. The best place to start is where you are right now. So if you're in a company that has product managers, that's the most awesome place to start, because you don't have to at least get inside the company, which is actually a huge bar. So if you can imagine trying to get into a new job, into a new company, you're raising the bar for yourself. The way I got into product management, and I didn't even know what product management was before I kind of realized I wanted to do that, was starting in market research. So I was in a market research role at HP, and I used to tag along with product managers because they were the resource in terms of, hey, I've got this new product coming up, I need all these things, research, secondary, primary research. And so I used to tag along with them on focus groups and quantitative studies and things like that. And I was like, okay, this is a fun job to do. Maybe I should think about doing that. And it so happened that one of the product managers left. And since we were all part of the same team, our manager basically said, I need somebody to cover, and I raised my hand and said, okay, I'll cover for the next 2 or 3 months. And in about 3 months' time, he turned around and said, do you want this job? Yeah, of course I'll take it, right? So start where you are. It's sort of the easiest way to get into a job that you don't already have. And it actually applies across anything, not just product management. Also find an expert. So product managers, especially if you're in an industry that's growing really fast and a company that's doing really well, they are incredibly busy. They're always busy, they're always fighting for resources. And so ask to become a mentor and ask to help them as well. And ask them, what can I help you with, right? And so build that relationship, and every product manager will have something that you can help with. Get in there, build that relationship. And then finally, just build a product. So more than anything else, building a product is the biggest sort of proof point of, hey, I actually want to do this, right? So I interviewed one really good product manager who she was not a product manager at that time. She was a financial analyst. But she said, I want to be a product manager. And I said, why? She said, because I worked on this weekend and I built this app with these 2 developers, and it's an awesome thing. It's not doing really well, but I got an awesome experience. And that was nothing to do with the day job. It was completely off of what she was doing. But she was so passionate about building this app that she went and she found developers and she put some money in and got the app on the App Store and stuff like that. And to me, okay, that is that's real passion, because that's where you're putting your effort. If your effort is following a passion, then that's what it is. And today, building a product is incredibly easy. A website is a product, an app is a product. You can even now you can build hardware products using 3D printing and things like that. So building a product is incredibly easy. So if you're interviewing for the job, show a product that you built. And I have had great interviews where this potential product manager would bring a bag filled with the stuff that they've done in the past. And broken things, when they put it together, go, this is what I built. And some of them have failed, but that's good. But all of it is demonstrate that you really want to be in this job. So typically, how do you build a product? You define the product. So write a set of requirements, right? And it's a very simple thing. Start a Google Doc and write down what you as a customer will want to have as a product. And with tools like Facebook and Twitter and things like that, you can actually do a quick research to get some quick customer feedback. So my son actually started his own company selling athletic gear. It came out of his own need, and he would run surveys on Facebook asking his potential customers what they would want to do, right? Or what kind of things that they wanted. And defined the product, and then went to Alibaba and sourced it from Alibaba. And then build a team. So again, you don't have to hire people, and product managers rarely have people reporting to them. They are always working on dependent teams. So you can easily build a team. You can, say if you're building an app, you can find a developer on Craigslist or Elance, 99 Designs, where you can get graphics and other things done. There's sites like Fiverr, but you can get all of these resources on demand that can be just enough for you to get the product out. So I had an example where a student of mine wanted to build a product which was a book, and he was an Oracle database administrator, and he had this idea for writing a book, but he didn't have any time to actually write the book because he was commuting these long distances. He was commuting almost 2 hours every day. And I said most of my time was commuting back and forth. And so what he did was he started recording his book while he was commuting. So every day he would get 2 hours of recorded stuff, which was stuff and ideas in his head. And then he sent these recordings off to Amazon Mechanical Turk, which is basically a person at the other end that takes your work and manual work and converts it into something digital. So he would send all these recordings to them, and they would come back with a digital copy of everything, and he evolved that into a book. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do in your downtime that can help you build a product. Okay, mentorship. I'm going to pause here. Any questions? Questions? Okay, this is another key to breaking the catch-22 is getting a mentor. And I have 4 tips for mentorship. The first one is don't be shy. And this is the biggest mistake I made was I didn't ask people to be mentors. In the Valley, there are a lot of people who are more than happy to be mentors. And the worst case scenario is that they'll say no, don't have time, whatever. You can always ask them, can you recommend somebody else? Right? And then they recommend somebody, it'll probably be one of their peers, so it's a good enough mentor. And then keeping in touch with this mentor is also really important, but the first step is ask people to be mentors. And in most cases, what I've seen is even if they say no, you can always catch them up with, for coffee or something like that and get their advice. So a no is not always a no, and I've had actually one mentor in my career who said no, and even then I got mentorship from him, but I would just run into him in the hallway and say, okay, let's get coffee or something like that, and I would run some stuff by him, right? So don't be shy. The second is be honest. So when you're in these mentorship sessions, which could be, most of these are very informal, could be over breakfast, coffee, lunch, dinner, whatever. Make sure that you're open about what you want to do. Career-wise, or product-wise, or if you've got a business idea, whatever that is, be honest in terms of, hey, here's where I am, here's where I need to go. Typically, if you pick a mentor, where you want to be. So for instance, if you want to be a VP of product or whatever, in this particular company, find a mentor in that role who's already there and tell them, hey, I want this job. Can you tell me how you got here? And what advice would you give me given where I am? The next is, of course, give before you ask. And most of the mentors that I work with are already well-to-do. They don't need any money or anything like that, no financial compensation. But I always make it a point to buy them a coffee or buy them the lunch or whatever. I never let them pay when they're in that mentorship session. And it actually works really well because they feel that you respect their time, you respect their individuality, and it works really well. And also always ask, can I help you with something? And so one of my first mentors, I just asked him, can I help you with something? And he said, yeah, I'm writing this book and I need somebody to proofread it. Would you mind proofreading it? So I read and proofread the book, and it evolved into a long-term relationship where he and I did some interesting things together. And then the last one is have clarity. So when you go into these sessions, be clear in terms of exactly what you want to achieve. So you have 5 questions, write those questions down, make sure that you get those questions answered. Just don't go into a mentorship session and go, okay, I'm going to spend an hour with you just talking stuff. Be very clear, because it also reflects on the other side, because they're taking time out of their schedule. They're there for that hour, so you want to be really cognizant of their time. Okay, and finally, so this is a bunch of final thoughts before I end. The first one is understanding that we are very emotional beings. We all of us think we are very rational, that we make incredibly irrational decisions, but most times we don't make rational decisions. So there is this analogy that Jonathan Haidt created called the rider and the elephant. And the rider is basically our conscious mind, the ones that's in the room right now, the one that's thinking all the time. And the elephant is the subconscious mind. And this elephant actually is the one that drives the rider in the wrong or right direction. So when they say first impressions matter, it's the elephant that makes the first impression. So all of the things that I talked about, right? Taking the break, dressing well, all of that stuff, is to basically reach out to the elephant. And as human beings, we tend to associate with people that we like. You always try to find a common bond. So for instance, I was traveling in Germany a few weeks ago, and one of the interesting things that I observed was I was standing, I was at the duty-free checking out, and the guy, at the duty free spoke with an American accent. I'm like, are you American? He said, yeah, I'm American. And, like, oh, and he's from New York. And I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah, we are American, right? And then when I was in the Bay Area, and we were, there was another meeting, and we were all, all of these people are from the Bay Area, and those guys are from New York. I'm like, that's interesting, because in a different environment where we're in a foreign country, we all find common things, right? And our perception of common becomes bigger as we go into different places. So in Germany, an American was just like me because he's American. But here he was a New Yorker, and I'm a Californian, and all that kind of thing. So it's really interesting to appeal to that elephant. Once you appeal to the elephant, then people like you, and if they like you, then everything else follows. So I had an interesting incident just a few weeks ago where we were trying to hire somebody. And on paper, the guy looked great. He came in, and then as it turned out, I was supposed to be the last one to interview the guy. And my manager interviewed him before I did. And he interviewed me, he interviewed the guy, and my manager came to me and said, just send him home, he's not a good fit. I'm like, but he looked great on paper. He's like, I don't care. He's not a good fit, send him home. So I didn't even get to interview the guy because I don't know what he said, but so again, you've got to be liked. Doesn't matter how good your resume looks. If you're not liked, it doesn't matter. The next is Net Promoter Score. Is everybody familiar with Net Promoter Score? So Net Promoter Score is actually, I'll give you an example. So I just bought a pair of frames from Warby Parker, and so they sent this survey out. And this is typically what most companies do right now, is they'll ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your experience? And they'll also ask you why. And based on how you vote between 1 to 10, you create a score. It can be from minus 100 to 100, and 100 is great, minus 100 is really bad. Do the Net Promoter Score on yourself as well to see what happens, right? So it's interesting. Send out a survey to, create a Google form, send out a survey to people that you know, your acquaintances, colleagues, managers, and say, would you recommend me for a product management job? And why? So you'll get your own score in terms of, what do other people perceive you as, and then the why, of course, will tell you if it's in the promoters, detractors, or passives. Okay, and the last, Silicon Valley. This is the most amazing place to be. There is this amazing intersection of intellect, capital, risk-taking, of course, and generosity, which is why all of us are here. So I've been blessed to live in countries like India, Singapore, Hong Kong, travel around the world. There's nothing like Silicon Valley. This 50 square miles is the most amazing place in terms of not only where we are right now, but where we'll be in the next 20 years. So if you think that this internet thing is going away anytime soon, we have not seen anything yet. The way it'll affect our lives. So you can imagine we are, in this small area, we are here. The best jobs are going to be here. The best careers are going to be here. So take advantage of this. And the fact that you guys are here, that's the first positive step, is just being in all these forums, connecting with the right people. Most jobs here are based on word of mouth. Like you make a good impression, and the next time you want to, your job is a phone call away. And so when I left Amazon, well, before that, whenever you leave a job, make sure you don't burn any bridges, don't slam any doors, because yes, you may never want to work with that company, and there are companies that I would never work for again, but the people will not be at that same company for too long. And so people will move around. So make sure that you create an awesome impression when you leave. And so even on the last day, work as if you're going to come back on Monday. If Friday is your last day, work as if you're going to come back on a Monday, because people will remember that. People always remember last impressions. The example I was going to give was when I left Amazon, I had a sort of an exit interview with the SVP, and this guy was pretty high up. He still is, he reports to Jeff Bezos, so he's pretty high up. And so a 30-minute conversation, and so he asked me a bunch of things, what can we fix with this, with this department, with the company, what do you think the threats are, some general stuff. In the end, he said, if you ever change your mind, give me a call. So I said, okay, I remember that. And then fast forward about 3 years or so, I decided I'm going to switch careers and things like that. And I sent a note to him. I clearly remember it was like at 10:15 in the night. I sent a note to him saying, hey, remember that we had this conversation, and you said call me when you're looking for a job. And then within 3 minutes, I got a reply back saying, yep, talk to me, we've got something interesting, right? So the point here is people remember stuff. When they say stuff, they will actually do stuff. So remember that. And then finally, all of this stuff, again, it doesn't matter if you don't actually put it into practice. So will this work for you? I don't know. It may or may not. But if you don't actually do it, it doesn't matter. So if you have success, let me know. I'll be more than happy to add more tips here. If you found something that's interesting, I can add it here as well. But doing all this, doing is much more important than just talking. And then finally, some resources that I talked about, so you can find them in the slides. I can email the slides to you. That's it. Thank you.